do have a quorum this evening, and so there's going to be a lot to go through tonight as we will be reviewing the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget, and we want to thank everyone for being here with us this evening. Since there is going to be a lot to go over tonight, we're going to leave the discussion between the committee and staff and the board itself this evening. For those that have any questions or comments from the public, you're encouraged to reach out to one of us. And there's also the public comment at our Alderman meeting as well. This will most likely come before the Board of Aldermen on Tuesday. So there'll be an opportunity for that then. So at this time, I'll hand it over to Sally and we will jump right in.
Okay. So I'll do a quick introduction before Stacy then goes over the main numbers. A quick note, what you have printed out before you does not include the full CIP project pages. It's got the CIP summary, about 4 pages or so, but it doesn't have all the project pages. I mean, that really not changed a significant amount since you guys last saw those. So, okay, so I just wanted to make that clear that what's in your printed packet does not include all those project pages. So cut out about 80 pages on your packet there.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so quick introduction. So these will be themes kind of that apply to the whole budget overarching here. So presented as a balanced fiscal year 25 budget. It is a $25 million budget. Okay, this is a 29% increase from the previous year's budget. Okay, and that's after adjustments and amendments. We still have some final adjustments to go. Okay, but a 29% increase from last year. So when looking at expenditures, not including inflationary and other factors noted later, grant-funded projects amount for most of the increase between the current estimated year-end and this new budget. Total expenditures on grant-funded projects is roughly $6.5 million. On the revenue side, increases in revenues are largely accounted for by the increase in grant revenues, many of which have rolled over from previous year. I think I mentioned before, we had several large grant projects that we expected to be completed during this past year that haven't. So the downtown project was one of them that hasn't started yet. The airport T-hangers were supposed to have been completed already by now, and we're just getting going on them. There were some others that have just kind of rolled over into this next year. Plus, then the first full year of the additional 1% general revenue sales tax that was approved by voters in April 23. So those are what accounts for the largest portion of increase in revenues. All right, so reserve funds and transfers. So we talked about this some last year. So moving forward, so this budget and all subsequent budgets in years to come, there are 4 types of transfers between funds in the budget, this one and future ones, that are gonna occur every year. So number 1 is gonna be transfers from operating funds to reserve funds. Okay, so that we keep those reserve funds healthy. Number 2 is going to be transfers from operating funds to depreciation and replacement funds, or repair and replacement funds. Okay, and so you see a note here, if the above, number 1, reserve goal is met, then a minimum of 5% of previous year's operating expenses go to the repair and replacement fund. Okay. The third type are going to be general fund transfers to funds without an independent or a sufficient revenue stream. So the cemetery operating fund, building permit fund, economic development, those don't have sufficient revenue streams of their own. So basically they end up being funded through general fund. And then number 4 is the 5% royalty fee transferred from electric fund to general fund. So that's been a goal that we've worked hard the last few years to get down to. Okay. And that royalty fee is 5% of the previous year's electric department operating expenses. Okay. Which is the same kind of fee that any utility that's operating in the city limits would pay. All right, and so this, you guys have seen this before, this is our current reserve fund policy. I won't spend a long time going over it, I just put it in there for informational purposes. It's the same thing we saw last year. Previous year's balances. So in this budget, there are 4 instances of using previous year's ending fund balances for specific purchases and improvements. None of them are for operations, okay, but they're for capital improvement type projects, okay? So the first one, On May 20th, the Parks and Rec Board recommended approval of the Parks and Rec budget with the use of prior year's balances. And to be honest, the amount of that prior year balance almost equals the $50,000 insurance deductible. That won't all be coming out of parks, it'll be coming out of other departments of the city as well, but I mean, that's about the amount, and they approved using prior year fund balances for that. On June 3rd, the airport board recommended approval of the airport budget with use of prior year balances for local match, grant match funds for the T-Hangar construction project and upgrades to the pilot's lounge. And so, of note, those two funds do not have specific separate reserve funds. Okay, the airport and the Parks and Rec. Alright, and then number 3, the capital improvement plan includes the downtown tap project, and it's proposed that funds be used from prior year fund balance for capital improvements to cover the additional costs in that project. And then the 4th instance, on May 15th, that was June 15th, my apologies. The utility committee voted to recommend use of prior year's fund balances for the water department to cover funding of the depreciation and repair fund and for the addition of fire hydrant refurbishing and ongoing water line replacements. So those are the 4 instances in this budget where we propose using previous year balances. Okay, increases budget-wide. Supplies and material cost increases, added with delays and difficulty in finding what's needed, especially related to any and all electrical components and supplies. Recently, our electric superintendent had requested some not to exceed, proposals requested to the board. Instead of a bid that says, hey, here's a firm price, I'd like to buy this, the places won't hold the prices longer than 3 days. So we can't go through our normal bid process, especially on electrical supplies. Then on the second item, there's a 3% cost of living increase for all city employees and up to a 2% merit raise for those whose merit evaluations warranted. Okay? And then the other item that's budget-wide is the general liability insurance has increased by 28% this year. Okay. All right, so some assumptions that we made in preparing this year's budget. The first 3 items relate to employee retention and recruitment. So the first one is pay schedule adjustments, and we'll get into the details of that here in just a moment. Cost of living adjustment, the merit raises, and then the last item is the addition of new positions. Okay, we'll talk about each of those separately. So the pay scale adjustments, or pay schedule. So I'm proposing the addition of 2 positions in the pay schedule. Just like last year, I used the Missouri Municipal League salary schedules, their survey of schedules to benchmark the range of pay for these positions. So the first one is parks technicians. Previously, we had them either classified as a heavy or a light equipment operator. They do so much more than that. They do maintenance on facilities within the parks. They do cleaning and janitorial. They do project development. They do a much wider variety than just an equipment operator. Okay, so like I said, I benchmarked both job descriptions and pay ranges with the Missouri Municipal League's survey of salaries. The other one is a plant operator. So this is our wastewater treatment plant. It was, I don't know, we just didn't have it in our pay scale. And so it's something that's important enough, it needed to be added in, because again, in the past, we just had them classified as a heavy equipment operator, and that doesn't fit the technical knowledge and expertise and the training that person has to go to operate the plant. So, what this looks like, I know you all have it in your packet. So these in, I guess, pink or peach, I'm not sure what color they're showing on the screen. Here's the parks technician. So you'll see the pay range there. So this is a new position added into the schedule from $17.38 to $22.68. Okay, and then the other one, the wastewater plant operator, from $18.03 to $23.53. Okay. Now what you're looking at in this pay schedule also includes the proposed 3% COLA. So that's added in these numbers. All of the others that you see on here, and on the next page is just the management piece of that same schedule, okay? But what you see, all of the others are what was proposed and approved last year, and then just with the proposed 3% COLA added. Okay. If you guys, committee members, if you have questions, just let me know, okay? Kyle?
Up at the top, just a little bit there, what's the 0.03 and 1.03?
So, okay, so that's how I have this set up to calculate COLA, okay? So, if I took this number, I can't do it here because it's a
Yeah, 3%.
PDF, and I can't change it.
I see what you're saying.
But in the Excel spreadsheet, if I took this 3% is what that is, 0.03, and zeroed it out, then this is gonna be a multiplier of 1 in that next box, and then that multiplies through every number in the schedule. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but that way, we could play with it and see how it changed the schedule based on what the proposed COLA was. Okay.
Sally, you might get to this, but do you know off the top of your head how many city employees there are?
Currently, we have, this might not be exact, but we have approximately 54 full-time.
Okay.
I don't have a good number on the part-time, especially because right now, we have a bunch of seasonal. You think the Parks Department, all of the ball programs that are going on, they have seasonal umpires, coaches, refs, all of that kind of stuff as well. So it expands quite tremendously in the summertime. We also have seasonal staff at the cemetery. I'm trying to think where else. Is it mostly parks and cemetery? I think that's it. For seasonal.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet. And on summers, when the pool is open, it's even larger, because that's all seasonal staff. So. Okay. Anything else on this before we move on? Okay. All right, so cost of living adjustment, like I said, that was in that previous slide included. So a 3% COLA is what's proposed. That's based on the consumer price index for the St. Louis area. So I put in here, so the actual number as of April, was 4% over the previous 12-month period. But because we included merit, we kind of scaled that back to the 3% for COLA. Okay, and then employees have the ability to earn an extra 1 or 2% based on their merit. Okay. I included some community comparisons. I had some of these numbers in last year. This year I went in and kind of showed the changes. So you'll see here the average City of Salem employee wage, June 2024 is $36,851. That is a change, the little delta sign there, of a negative 1.7%. And so, at first glance, you might think, oh, whoa, how did that go down? The reason it went down, we had 3 retirements in this past budget year that were all at the upper end of the pay scale, okay? And so that dropped the overall average. The median wage for city employees is the $35,184. And then for comparison, I've got the average Dent County wage here, $36,175. Now that'll adjust in July. They issue those new numbers. But that's a change of 6% over last year. Median household income is $35,413. And again, that's a change of 2.4% over last year. So, like I said, you can see the rest of the numbers, just kind of for reference to see where we kind of benchmark on all of these. Okay, moving along. Merit raises. So 2% is what's proposed. So this current year, this past year, we've implemented merit evaluations. So merit evaluations are performed annually based on the employee's performance. The individual scoring on the evaluation determines what level of merit raise the employee has earned. So they can earn an additional 1% or an additional 2%. And this is the mechanism by which an employee moves up the steps of the salary schedule. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this salary schedule slide again. So we have this, and the whole schedule adjusts each year by the COLA. But if an employee wants to move, say, from a level 4 to a level 5, that happens through their merit increases. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, let's see, okay, I think I've covered everything there. All right, new positions. So, kind of looking back a little bit, in fiscal years 21 and 22, the city laid off a total of 6 full-time positions. Since then, we've added just a half of a full-time position And that half of a position is split between two individuals, so they're working like less than 20 hours a week each. So that's what we've done in the meantime. In this budget, we propose to add 5.5 full-time positions back, but structured differently than they were before. We're not just replacing the same positions. So 2 of those positions are wastewater treatment specialists. That's required by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources and our new sewer management plan. Okay? So that's 2 of them. Another one is an economic development director. So that position was previously a partnership between the city, Dent County, and the Dent County Industrial Development Authority. The Industrial Development Authority has voted and approved partnering with the city. I've got to finalize stuff with the county, I don't have that yet, but the Industrial Development Authority has approved partnering with the city, and once the position's hired, contributing $1,000 a month towards that salary, okay, for 3 years. So like I said, I still got to finalize things with the county. So there's that position. The administrative assistant, so this position replaces one of our part-time folks who's splitting the part-time position. Okay, so it'll replace that person who's doing less than 20 hours a week already. So we'll go with a full-time person in that role. And then propose temporary or part-time positions, an additional cemetery seasonal worker. So right now we have 1 full-time guy who's year-round and 1 seasonal worker. This would add a second one, which would relieve then the street department from having to send their guys over regularly to assist with lawn mowing during the summer season. An animal shelter technician or animal care coordinator, that's another part-time position that we have proposed in here. That would help. Right now, Travis, our animal shelter guy, he's doing all the mowing around the facility, he's doing all the cleaning, all the feeding, and so we've got to pull from other departments if he needs a day off or vacation or something like that, so this will help relieve some of that. And then a maintenance manager. So this one's not, it's new as a position, but it's not a new salary. How's that? We're gonna take an existing employee and shift them over, add the facility maintenance duties to his current job description. He will get an increase in pay for taking on these additional duties, but it won't be an entire another salary in the budget.
I have a question. Cemetery seasonal worker and the animal shelter technician, couldn't they, like, one person do those jobs, both jobs?
I mean,
It might save you some money, I don't know. No?
No. The seasonal cemetery worker, I mean, from the time he starts in the
When he
morning,
has to mow, yeah.
that's all he does and that's all he has time for. And so what we're looking at is proposing as a part-time position, either break that up into 5 4s or 4 5s, however that breaks out best, to cover on Saturdays and Sundays, because Travis has been having to come in on Saturdays and Sundays, and so if he comes in, it's either comp time or overtime. And so we're trying to alleviate that burden and then also have staff there on Saturday mornings, so if someone wanted to come by and adopt, they would have time in the morning hours when it's cooler or nicer. You know, they could acquaint themselves with an animal, view the animals, kind of that kind of thing. And so that's why the 2 positions really, they won't
Right.
coalesce so well.
the schedules won't allow.
No, they
Yeah.
don't really don't.
All right, anything else on this slide? Okay. All right, so some points to consider, okay? So tonight, before you use a balanced budget, because of conversations that have come up in the past, I wanted to know, while we do have debt, we're not operating in a deficit. And we have dedicated revenue streams identified from which this debt is to be repaid, okay? So this will also be the first full year with the additional 1% general revenue sales tax. So then the other key points, so we've accomplished the goal of reducing dependency on transfers from the electric utility. So again, first year for that. We've begun setting funds aside in the depreciation and repair funds for future vehicle and equipment repairs and replacements. So that's new in this budget. And then the third item, and this is something that, this is not the fun side, okay, but this is something we need to keep in our minds. The sewer bond approved by voters in April of '23 should close this December or January, okay? It's anticipated that in addition to the included sewer rate increases in this budget, we're gonna be looking at additional increases in the future, okay? Fiscal year 26 to cover final closing, it's gonna be final closing costs and plant replacement funding. It's gonna be a requirement of the funding that we have a replacement fund specifically for the plant, okay? And then potentially in fiscal year 27, once construction is complete, we know already there are anticipated increases in operation costs for this plant. Okay, once all of the improvements are done. And so we don't know what that's gonna be just yet. Okay, so that's the bummer, not so great side of all of this, but I think it's important that it be out there and we have that in the back of our head. Okay. Other thoughts or considerations from committee members? All right, then I will move on to, we'll let Ms. Stacy take over as we walk through sections of the budget. And I'm assuming we're not going line by line, we're talking about changes since they've seen it last,
Yeah, we'll just start,
unless you guys have specific questions.
we'll just start with this first slide, just to look at all the funds that we have. We are requesting 2 additional funds, I think I discussed last meeting. The 111, which is the second line item there, is the general fund, replacement fund, for our vehicle replacement and equipment. And then on, down just a little ways under parks,
Oh,
211, parks, same thing, replacement fund. So those are additional funds that we are requesting to put in future budgets to fund their, vehicle replacements and maybe any building repairs. So overall, if, so this shows the budgeted revenues, expenditures, your transfers in and out,
And finally.
and then the final fund balance within each fund. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that, at the end of the fiscal year 25, with the proposed budget, we're looking at, 10.9 million in ending fund balances. And then, these numbers have changed since we last visited them. So I have received updated numbers from our engineer on the grant projects, so they have increased quite a bit compared to what we had in our last meeting. So, for the fiscal year 25, revenues less expenditures, we have budgeted the year with a surplus of 2.1 million. If you look at the third line down, that's what we budgeted in this current fiscal year. And then the next line down is where we project to end this fiscal year. And the numbers are quite different. As Sally had mentioned, we have several grant projects that we did not complete this fiscal year, so that's why the estimate is quite a bit lower than what we did budget for. And then, unless you have questions, we'll look at the next slide. The grants, so this is a, look at all of our grant projects that we have going on. I don't think I had that in our last meeting, but just so you can see what is going on. So the grant revenues are almost 6.2 million that we anticipate coming in this fiscal year. And then, we anticipate to expend 6.5 million. And then, as far as, out of the city's pocket, the city match comes up to around $400,000 is what the city matches out of $600 million. So if, go ahead.
Can I make one comment before we move on? So, one small grant so this is the only change to the CIP. There's one small grant that we had applied for. It was for records, scanning, so to have them available electronically. We did not receive that grant. So we got the letter just earlier this week that we did not receive that grant. So we pulled it out as a grant. I left it in the CIP and we did add some in the budget for that, a lesser amount, so that we can go ahead and move forward with starting getting some of the documents scanned. Okay. So, sorry.
Okay, this is overall look of the general fund, revenues, expenditures, and other sources are your transfers in, and other uses are your transfers out. On the proposed budget, we'll have a surplus of $6,000. And down below, it kind of shows the details of the major I guess revenues is the increase of 1% sales tax. I did not put that on here, but it's around $770,000 increase. We do also are moving some funds to the replacement fund and the emergency fund. So we are pulling in the revenue line, we are pulling, from prior year expenditures. So, we're just moving from one fund to another. It's still general fund money, I guess you can say, but it's just going to the reserve and replacement funds. Then, any questions on the general fund summary? Now, this is just a look at the history of the sales tax. As you can see, it's increased due to the additional sales tax that we are bringing in. And this is just a breakdown of all the general fund revenue sources and by percentage. Sales tax brings in the largest amounts at 77%. And this is just a breakdown of all the general fund revenues. Unless you want to look at a specific line item, not much has changed since the last meeting. Like I said, the sales tax revenue, if you look at the far right column, that shows the difference between this current fiscal year and what our current budget year is. So again, that sales tax line, $792,000 increase, that's the additional sales tax. That reserves from prior year, that $581,000. That's just moving it from the general fund to the DNR fund and the emergency fund, which is the reserve account, yes.
Any questions on this here? Okay.
And the next several slides is just a breakout of the details within each category by line item. Ready to move on? Okay. General fund, okay, so this is just the major changes within the general fund. This details out what, Sally has already discussed, the 3% COLA, the 2% merit. It was discussed in the CIP meeting, capital improvement, the sidewalk construction has requested a backhoe replacement. Half of that is gonna come out of the general DNR fund, the other half, on capital improvements. Then the general liability insurance, the increase, retirement, the police retirement is increasing 1%. So then the police capital improvement, that's gonna come out of the general DNR fund at $102,000. And then the proposed additional staff positions that affect the general fund is listed there.
Stacy, when's the sidewalk construction supposed to begin?
That's part of the downtown project.
In the target date?
Right now,
Is there a target date?
several months ago was the target date. I think March was the target date for kickoff, but, right now, MoDOT is still doing a review. They're having an administrative hearing right now on the bids that were submitted for it, so we're waiting on their completion of that process.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, we were hoping that was gonna be starting off in March.
Okay.
Okay, this just shows the general fund is broken out into 4 categories, which is administration, police department, public works, and then animal control. It has been requested to change animal control to code officer.
Code enforcement.
Court
or-
enforcement, so it's something we can talk about.
Gotcha, as far as title.
Yeah, cause he's not really just animal control, so,
Make it a little bit more clear.
yeah. Next slide, this just shows what the breakout is, police being 40% of the expenditures of the general fund, administration being 23%, public works at 21%, and animal control at 3%. And then we have transfers to other funds, which are at 13%. this just breaks out, what's in, who is in administration and all of those other departments, so this is just the breakout of administration. The details of the main, increases, if you scroll it down just a little bit so we can see all of that. So like you see where the city clerk increase over, if you look at the far right column, show that the budget line increases around almost 39,000. The bottom of the screen shows what's in that. So, right now, the assistant city clerk is paid out of the non-departmental fund. We're moving her to the city clerk fund since she's the assistant city clerk. And then also, as Sally mentioned, document scanning, we got $20,000 plugged in, so we can hopefully start working on some of that. And then on the non-departmental, that increase of 39,000, is the administrative assistant moving from a part-time position to a full-time position, and that's including all of the insurances, taxes, and the benefits. Okay, and then the next several slides is just a breakdown within each department and their budgets.
When you're ready to move on, let me know. Or if you guys have questions about a specific item.
What again are the special services, 27,000? Under the miscellaneous?
This is the city attorney, that's what we
That's
pay.
his services.
That's our, yeah, that's what we pay our attorney.
Got it.
It's paid as an expense, it's not a salary.
Yeah, generally, any professional services are gonna be under special services. Yeah, it varies by department.
It
IT
does.
is under special services. I mean, in a different section of the budget than the city attorney, but that's what it'll be categorized as.
Got it. Thank you.
You ready? This is just the animal control budget. The increase there is the, adding a part-time position for the dog shelter, plus all the, benefits that goes along with that. Plus the pay increase of the person that is there. But other than that, I mean, we have added some to supplies. You know, if we're gonna have more animals out there, I anticipate we're gonna spend more on supplies, dog food. I'm not sure that's gonna actually be enough, but we'll have to just kinda watch this fund and see what we need to do going forward. Okay. The next slides are just the detail within each line item. Then that goes to the police department, which is 40% of the general fund expenditures. The major change is just the overall increase in salaries and retirement. That's just the main changes to that budget. Any questions on that? And the public works department, within public works, we have the maintenance mechanic, we have the sidewalk construction crew, except for their salaries are paid out of the capital improvement fund, but all their expenditures come out of the sidewalk construction under general fund. And then the street department, and then part of, Steve's salary is paid out of this fund. And then here, the increases are the maintenance mechanic, so we're, you know, giving him a bump in pay since we're changing his title and his duties, he's gonna have a lot more to do. Street reduction, even though we're proposing the 3% increase and 2% merit, changes of positions and salary amounts, some higher paid salaries had retired, so their overall salaries have actually reduced. And then I reduced their overtime, cause when we've been budgeting, it's nowhere close to what they've been spending, so. we budgeted the same as we did last year as far as, street repayments. For this budget year, we'll end the surplus of around 71,000. So that will bring our ending fund balance up to be around 664,000. The sales tax, so if you look on the far right, I've increased that around 40,000 because we've just been under budgeting that one, so I went ahead and increased it. And then that capital improvement, I think the next slide might show what's in that. Yeah, so this is everything within the capital improvement in the special street fund. Department, just shows their history of their sales tax. The Parks Fund, Parks Board did approve their budget, they've already reviewed it and approved it. As Sally had mentioned, one of the next three. And they do have, so this is their major changes within their budget. They do have a deficit of $444,700 in their proposed budget, and the Park Board did approve using their prior year fund balance to cover that deficit. Next slide, so they have kept $215,000 in their capital improvement that they're wanting to spend. Part of that is the COP payment, that $109,000, that first one. But then, all that, the others is what they want to spend on pool improvements and park improvements to the concession building and the restrooms.
Questions that anybody has?
Another fund we don't use much is, I'm not sure exactly why it's set up, but law enforcement fund, we do get some revenues, from, that is collected on alcohol and drug related offenses. And these funds can be used for training. Not a whole lot in there, but I know Chief does schedule some trainings that we spend out of this fund. Okay. And this is just another officer training fund. Revenues come from the municipal division. I'm not sure exactly what its purpose is, but again, it's for training. So we bring in a little bit of revenue, and then we spend a little bit on some training. I think we just let this fund build up, and then as it builds up, then we can use it for training.
Probably need to reword that super now interest, I don't wanna take the super part of it out. I want like a whole lot of interest.
Not so super.
Yeah.
Well, some of the other councils, a bit
It
more
looks better.
super, yeah.
I don't want so super.
Okay, next fund, okay, the fireworks fund, as of last budget year, I believe the city, stopped doing the fireworks, and I believe Kayla has a committee that is, trying to organize that this year. This committee did approve us to donate 10,000 to this year's fireworks. So, not sure what you wanted me to do for this next budget year, if we wanna continue with the 10,000, if we want to reduce or not do anything or increase. So I will need a recommendation from you all on what you wanna do with, I guess, the fireworks for the next year, upcoming year.
Good, any thoughts on that?
I thought the plan for that in the discussion, so there was a 501c3 that was set up for donations from people in the
We're in the
community.
process of.
Yeah, instead of the city paying for it, and that was my understanding.
I guess the question just then becomes, does the city just wanna
Dissolve it or.
bow out altogether and not budget for it? Do you guys wanna put something in there for it?
Being that it's the first year, I wouldn't mind putting about half.
The 5,000.
Yeah, at like 5 5,000, that way, like, you know, cause it's the first year, we don't know how it's gonna react the first year. Whether or not they're able to get the full, and it'll take some pressure off to, I know they're really at it, you know, rearing to go, but it's gonna take some time to set up that 501c3, it's gonna take some time for them to get notoriety at that. And I think it would take some of the burden off, that's a personal opinion of mine. I like the fireworks, I like the fireworks shows and stuff like that. I'm not even gonna be around for this one, but I'm still willing to, you know, try to put some effort into it. But that's a personal opinion. What do you guys think?
I think it makes sense.
Do you need a motion on that, or?
We can
we'll just make
include it
that
in the
adjustment?
final motion,
Yeah.
we'll just have to remember it.
But Sally, the 501c3 is set up, right? Or
I
no?
don't know,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
right. I'll check with Kayla.
Okay, we can move on. Next, we have our inmate security fund. The source of revenue comes from the Denton County Municipal Division for surcharge fees for violation of any municipal ordinance. Any revenue that comes in here, which isn't much, as you see, we have budgeted maybe $209. But it's to help offset any prisoner subsistence costs, which doesn't touch that line item at all. So we do have it in the police budget, for prisoner subsistence, but this could go towards that if there was much in there. Okay. And then our next fund is a grant fund. This is where we do all of our CDBG grants out of. They do require that we have a separate account just for their grant revenues and expenditures. Currently, we do have the CDBG grant for the trades, construction trades building for the school. It should be finalized out. We're waiting on a part.
I've not heard any updates
I
about that.
haven't either.
We need to ask Josh about the transformer for the construction trades building, cause it was supposed to be in by the end of June.
What does that stand for?
CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. Now,
Okay.
CHDC, I don't know,
Yeah, that was previous.
prior to any of this, yeah,
Development,
block grant.
okay.
And they're federal funds that roll through the state and the state administers them. And so, for board members, certainly you will have heard, so we just applied for another CDBG grant for the sewer treatment plant, to the tune of $750,000. So they have them for various types of, you know, different buckets, all CDBG grants. And, sorry, another piece on that, CDBG grants, cities can only have 2 open at a time. So with applying for the sewer one and the construction trades one still open, we're maxed out till we can get the construction trades ones closed out.
And it's the sewage one, we close that one out, it's not by stage, it's by the end of the whole project.
The end of the project, yes. Yeah, to close them out, you have to have the project completed, so that's why the construction trades one's not done. We're waiting on that transformer to get in and be installed, and they do all that final electrical work, and then that project will be done for that phase of it, and then we can close out the grant.
Sally, what's the timing on the construction trades, do we know?
As soon as the transformer's here.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's the way so many projects have gone, because supplies and materials, like I mentioned earlier, especially anything electrical components or pieces, they're backlogged and they're ridiculous lead times to get the parts in. So this one we ordered, oh man, at least 6 months ago, if not longer, and we've been waiting for it to come in.
Josh, electrical superintendent says it was supposed to come out of production on the 23rd of this month. Nothing on when it's supposed to be shipped, so we'll check on that.
Thanks, Steve.
Anything else on CDBG grants? Okay.
We have our building permit fund. The sources of revenue comes basically to break even, because, it doesn't have enough revenues to sustain itself, so we have to do a budget, or, yeah, a transfer from the general fund to this fund. So about 32,000 will be transferred from general fund. So, yeah, there's not a lot of change in his budget. Just have the details. And then the capital improvement fund, this is just a overlook of their history, the sales tax. Go to the next slide, goes through the details. So this is the capital improvement, the revenues and expenditures. So for this upcoming fiscal year, we've got 1.3 in revenues budgeted and expenditures of 1.4. Was a deficit of 83,000. We just had a special meeting last week because the airport fund, with their project going, we have to pay the contractor the expenditures for their supplies, which for this fiscal year was around 200,000. We won't get those grant reimbursements till this upcoming fiscal year. So we had to do a loan, no interest loan from the capital improvement fund to the airport fund. So this fiscal year, we're transferring 200,000 to the airport fund. And then in the upcoming 25 budget year, we'll transfer 500,000, but we should see those revenues come in this next budget year. Because I think they're supposed to be done with their construction, I think around September. So that gives several months for those funds to come in, so I don't anticipate them not coming in next fiscal year. So it will end their budget year, 25 budget year of 117,000. Their ending fund balance with the loan payback will be 1.1 million. Questions? This is just a breakdown of the revenues. And then the expenditures. So, 1.3 in revenues, budgeted, and expenditures of 1.1 million. 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 once we get, when we get better costs, we'll just come back for budget adjustment.
Right, yeah, until we know better what those are gonna be.
Awesome.
And then dangerous structure remediation is 15,000. And here's just a breakdown of that leases and debt that is in that first line.
Well, thinking about that server thing we were talking about, like, this is something that you're gonna need, like, next year, right?
Did you say, I think you said like October, we'll have to.
Yeah, like coming in, then like, this budget only accounts for 15,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, when we have better, more firm numbers, cause
Okay.
right now the 30 is still just an estimate as
Just a
well.
thought, yeah, like, oh, you should probably, just a
Right.
guy.
So,
Okay,
what
I
our
was like, do
plan
you need
is,
some kind of recommendation for
Yeah.
us for that?
no, what we're recommending right now is that we leave it at the 15, and when we get to that point, if that's not enough, then we'll request a budget adjustment for what the actual amounts are,
Okay,
since it's so linear.
okay, just curious.
And it's not even the servers themselves, it's more the licensing and the things that go with it to be able to transfer all of the data.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Any more questions? Moving on. Okay, this is just the detail of all those capital improvement expenditures. So basically, it's the same thing we just looked at. Just look down by line item. Okay, and then sanitation fund, this is just basically a pass-through account. We do charge an additional, a fee to do the billing. So we anticipate, a surplus of around 12,000. I did increase the revenues and expenditures, cause it does go up every year, so we'll have to revisit. I think it's 50 cents that it might go up.
the other thing that comes out of this is the, biodegradable leaf bags.
Leaf bags.
The folks can purchase there at the utility office, so those will be in this account as well.
And then you have the cemetery fund. Its revenue sources is grave openings and purchases of burial plots. It does not bring in enough revenue, so a transfer does have to be done from the general fund. Notable expenditures is the, pay increases and then the additional staff requested. This is just a breakdown of the fund. Requesting 115,000 will be, transferred from the general fund to make this fund, come in at 0. So there's not a lot of changes, just to the personnel line is the major change in the budget. Okay, moving on. Okay, then we do have a cemetery endowment fund. Brings in of those grant revenues, which brings us down to, so the loan that I talked about earlier. So when this current fiscal year, 200,000 is coming into this fund, and then, 500,000 in fiscal year 25 is coming into this fund, and then you see the 700,000 underneath that, that's going out of this fund to pay back the capital improvement fund. So that brings their balance at zero. They should, if it was based upon these exact numbers, it would be zero. Their ending fund balance would be 111,000. And they did approve, I think 87,000 is coming from the prior year reserves. So the airport board did approve that.
Stacy, do you have any additional information on the revenues?
Yes, we can look at the details.
Do you have it?
So here's the revenues, we got their hangar fees, and then the grant, and then we got sale of fuel sales. That's basically all of their revenues.
So like the hangar rental fee, so what does it cost to rent a hangar?
Depends on the size of the hangar.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head what those costs are, sorry, we were just talking about them. Yeah, and we're changing them, they're also in a multi-year agreement where they're upping them by $10 a month each year.
Mhm.
And so, I'm not sure when that completes, I wanna say maybe there's a couple more years on that.
Mhm.
Forgive me, I don't know what that total hangar cost is right now.
That's okay. Just
And we
looking
do
for
have some
visual
different size
understanding.
hangars. Right, as well, and so those are different prices as
Yeah,
well.
I think it's like somewhere between like 50 and 75 for depending on the hangar size. Cause they've got some that are larger than others, but it's somewhere in the, no, I think that's a
Month.
month, that's a month, yeah.
Even
Yeah.
that is really cheap.
Yeah, which is why they're on this step plan to
Yeah, they're moving
increase
up for
those.
it.
And one of the things too, most of our existing hangars are older. And there's no real uniformity to how they were constructed. And so, part of the discussion that we're having, and they intend to have another meeting before September, and the new hangar construction is completed, is that those rates will be different, because they're gonna be brand new. They are all enclosed, whereas all of our hangars currently are not enclosed. So those will be a different set of rates, but we just don't have them established yet.
Got it. Thank you.
And so we don't know what number to put in for what that might be yet, since we don't know what the rates are.
Understood.
If you go up, I think, go up one slide, this is just, what they've requested as far as get their capital improvements, they're redoing their pilot lounge. And then the T hangar construction, that's the city match part.
And the electric piece is part of the whole T hangar construction.
Right.
Doing electric too.
And then economic development. This is funded through grant revenue, significant changes, so the grant that we currently have, what we call the welcome home, is federal home, bank. We've decreased those revenues, because we've got some in this fiscal year. And, the overall project has actually been reduced compared to what we thought we was gonna be doing. And then also propose adding additional staff. A staff person, not plural, just one. There's just the details within that fund. So in the fiscal year 25, we anticipate that in that fund, with a surplus of 28,000. And then the fund balance be about 47,000. Any questions? Okay, looking at utilities, I know we looked at this in depth in the utility committee, so I'm not sure how much you all wanna look at it, but here's some notable changes within the electric fund. The overall revenues, we've reduced, just because we have been seeing a reduction in usage, so I have reduced that 155,000. The committee has recommended to eliminate the availability fee, which, will save around 270. There would be a loss of revenue for the city of 270,000. So then the expenditures are the cost of living. We have put in the budget to start tree trimming. That's going to be an ongoing cost, for the city going forward, at least for a while until we get a handle on the tree trimming. I have increased the 10% for utility costs, that's the city cost of power, and then the general liability increase. Do you just wanna look at the details in electric, or, well, here's the leases in depth that they have. They do lease a few trucks, a digger truck and a bucket truck. They have a COP payment, and in the February relief payment, they're still paying that off. Okay. That's just the details within their electric fund. They should end, for the fiscal 25 budget year, they'll end up $4,000 surplus. Their ending fund balance will be just over $1 million. So we have reduced the transfer from general fund. At one point, I'm not sure exactly what year it was, but they were transferring. At one point it was 1.5 million. It was several times it was over $1 million. So we have reduced that down to 350,000. And going forward, it will be based upon that 5% royalty fee or franchise fees. Any questions? They also have a replacement fund. Basically, the transformers and poles are coming out of that. They'll have an ending balance of 170,000, and all of the revenue comes basically from the operating fund. The electric reserve fund, the reserve balance should be close to 1.3 million. At the end of fiscal year 25, they'll have 1.4 million, so their reserve fund will be fully funded. Okay, and then the water fund, so the significant changes there, reducing revenues projected, we continue to see reduction in usage, so I have reduced the revenues by 31,000, and then their notable expenditures are the COLA, the cost of living, or the merit, then the general liability insurance, their capital improvements, water line replacements, 60,000, hydrant repair, replacement kits is 20,000. And then they have a COP payment also, 103,000 that they pay per year. Most of that was, well, all of that was for the AMI system. For the 25 budget year, they'll end in a surplus of $247. Not much, but. Okay, and then. That's just the details. Water fund DNR, again, that's repair and replacement. We do actually do some grants out of here. We've got the ARPA grant for the new well and tower that's being constructed. So that grant revenue and grant expenditures come out of this fund also. Right. Look at the details. But yeah, I think that's, there's two things. Yeah, no grant, I don't have it, okay, but yeah, we've got, yeah, all the grant funding is 2.6 million. Okay. In the reserve fund, so within the water reserve fund, we should have 207,000. Our beginning balance was 745,000 at the bottom. Okay, and then, the utility committee have requested to move the excess funds out of the reserve account to the replacement account. So that's why it was reduced down to 240,000. We just moved it from one fund to another. Okay, then on the sewer, notable changes, so the utility committee did recommend a rate increase. I don't have those numbers with me, but equates to about 282,000 in revenues. And then on expenditure side, the increase in COLA and then the merit. The two positions that Sally had, talked about earlier, adding, that's DNR regulated. And then our general liability insurance, we did add, sludge removal to our DNR fund to, do over the next couple budget years. And then in situ form, 100,000 we added in that, because we've got to start working on our sewer lines, so we had to start adding that into this budget and future budgets. Leases and debt, we have the COP payment, which is from 2017, but it's about 306,000 that we pay a year for that. And that was for the 2A upgrades.
Phase one.
Oh, sorry, yeah, phase one payment. For the sewer fund, we'll end up at a surplus of $108. And that is, part of that, if you scroll down just a little bit, 227 of that, or 178 is going to the sewer DNR to pay for what I said, that in situ form and the sludge removal, all of that's in the DNR fund. So it has to, we're moving that over to that fund to pay those expenditures. And then also the sewer reserve account, 49,000. Okay. And also within the DNR fund, we have the grant, which, the ARPA grant, which covers the phase 2A of the sewer upgrades. And looking at sewer reserve fund, we're down just a little bit. So we should have about 244,000 in the reserve fund. We're shy about 10,000. We're almost there. And then the last slide, this is just the debt service for the city. So for the fiscal year 25, we will pay just over $1 million in debt. Yeah, that column is at the very bottom, yeah. And so going into next fiscal year, our total debt will be almost 11,000 going forward. And that's before we add any of the bond that will be 26 or 27, we'll start seeing that debt in our books.
Right. This does include though the temporary bond that we have done to help pay for design work and engineering for phase 2. So that's that very last item here.
Which that amount will roll over to the SRF loan once that all finalizes.
And then I just included just the introductory CIP slides. I'm not gonna go over line by line the narrative there. All of these have been reflected in what Stacy's presented to you. On this page, this is the capital improvement revenues by year and by fund. And then down here, these are the expenditures, again, by year and by fund going across. So again, that's the 5-year plan. So for this year, it's just this very first column. And then the actual CIP kind of schedule itself. I said I did not provide all of the, okay, never mind. I didn't print it, sorry. It's not in your printed packet, but it is online. All of the project detail sheets are there as well. The full CIP is in there. And like I said, the only change to it since the CIP committee, capital improvement committee recommended approval is that one grant that we didn't get, so we reduced the total amount for that for this year. But we kept it for the next 4 years. We'll be reapplying and seeing if we can get it again, so. project, it's important enough, we're gonna keep it up there. Okay, I mean, I'll stand for any questions on that, but they're recaps of, yeah.
Any questions on the overall budget?
I have a question, this might be a really sore subject. So, the leakage program or whatever we're calling that fee that's on
The cert
bills
line,
now.
bill protection program.
Yes, it's gonna start in July,
Mhm.
that everybody's getting charged for, you opt out of it.
Mhm.
Is there income to the city?
No, it's all passed through straight to the company.
Wow.
There was an option to have them come to the city and it was voted not to.
Thank you.
A lot of information presented tonight.
Yeah.
Appreciate, staff's work on developing the budget, it's a lot of work and, takes a lot of time and a lot of meetings, to do that. So appreciate your time and appreciate the committees and the board's time as well. Is there anything that the committee wants to look at again, or is there any specific questions that you all have?
Not for me, I just wanna say thank you for the presentation, I thought it was really clear.
Yeah.
Well done, thank you.
And thanks for putting all the links in there to the different, some of the other sources of, like, where you came with some of the source data. That's a lot.
It is a lot, yeah. But we just wanna make sure that you guys
Yeah.
don't have any questions, any qualms or issues with any of it.
Any other comments or questions for this? So I know there was, earlier we mentioned about reducing the fireworks fund from 10,000 to
Yeah.
5,000. Okay, all right, so at this time, do we have a motion to recommend the budget with the amendment of the 5,000 reduction in fireworks fund?
It's not a reduction, is it? You don't have anything in there.
The 10,000.
Yeah, it was 10,000 to 5. I move to recommend the budget as presented with $5,000 on the fireworks fund, amended to the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second? Yeah. We got a second there. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And the motion carries. All right, so this will be presented to the Board of Aldermen, on Tuesday. So again, just want to thank everyone's time, this evening to review the budget. And, at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Okay, we got a second for Patty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion stays. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.